He wasn't looking for love, he sought control, redemption, and silence. Then he decided to buy 3 virgins, but the 3 women entered his world with truths he couldn't face. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're listening from. Stay tuned. The rain beat against the windows of the office on the top floor of the corporate building on Madison Avenue in New York City. Alexander Nash watched the city through the dark glass, his fingers drumming nervously on the imported mahogany desk. At 38, he commanded a financial empire that stretched from agribusiness in upstate New York to port operations in Baltimore, but none of the billions in his account could fill the void he had carried since his parents' death 20 years earlier. The accident had never been fully explained. An explosion in the laboratory of the family pharmaceutical company, supposedly caused by a gas leak. Alexander had always suspected there was more behind that tragedy, especially after finding incriminating documents in his grandfather's private safe, revealing obscure connections with political groups and money laundering schemes dating back to the troubled years of the 1970s. On that rainy March night, he was waiting for the arrival of 3 women who had responded to a very specific advertisement. Art restorers, specializing in ancient manuscripts and historical documents. What they didn't know was that their hiring was no coincidence. Each one had hidden connections to the Nash family's dark past, connections that Alexander had discovered through years of private investigation. The first to arrive was Olivia Dawson. She climbed the 40 floors with a worn leather folder under her arm, her brown hair tied in a messy bun that exposed the delicate line of her neck. Born in Charleston, Olivia had moved to New York after the death of her twin sister Claire 5 years earlier. The suicide had happened on the eve of Olivia's wedding, leaving an enigmatic letter that mentioned secrets that some families carry like curses. Since then, Olivia had taken refuge in her work, specializing in the restoration of colonial manuscripts and historical documents. Her reputation in academic circles was impeccable, but few knew that she obsessively investigated the origins of her maternal family, descendants of Lebanese immigrants who arrived in America in the early 20th century. Claire had begun this investigation, and Olivia felt that finishing her sister's work was the only way to find peace. When Alexander received her in his office, the air seemed to electrify. There was something in the way she looked at him, without fear or submission, that destabilized him. Olivia wasn't just beautiful, she radiated a contained strength, as if she held secrets that could destroy or redeem anyone who dared to come close. "Mr. Nash," she said, her voice firm but carrying a melancholy that Alexander recognized immediately. "I received your invitation to examine the manuscripts in the private collection. I must admit I was intrigued by the specificity of the request." Alexander gestured for her to sit but remained standing, studying her every movement. "Dr. Dawson, your reputation precedes you, but I must confess that my interest in your work goes beyond the professional." He paused, letting the tension build. "I believe you have personal connections to some of the documents I intend to restore." Olivia's face paled slightly. "What kind of connections?" "Documents that belong to your great-grandmother Yasmin al-Safi. Poems and letters she wrote before disappearing in 1943. Alexander observed her reaction carefully. "Documents that my family has kept for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal them." Olivia felt the world spin. Yasmin al-Safi was a name that Claire had mentioned repeatedly in her research, but she had never been able to find concrete records about her. The connection between her great-grandmother and the Nash family was exactly what Claire had been looking for before she died. "How did you obtain these documents?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "My grandfather acquired them in a questionable manner. Let's say some Arab families in America had debts to our family. Yasmin was one of those people." Alexander finally sat down, leaning forward. "But there's more, much more. And I believe you're the only person capable of deciphering the secrets these documents contain." Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as if Claire were whispering in her ear, begging her to accept. "I need to see the documents first." "Naturally. But first you need to understand that this is not an ordinary job. You will be staying at my property in Hudson Valley for the next 2 months. You'll have unrestricted access to the archives, but you'll also be under my protection. There are people who don't want these secrets to come to light." The proposal was both tempting and terrifying. Olivia knew she was being dragged into something much bigger than a simple restoration, but the possibility of finally understanding what had led Claire to suicide was irresistible. "I accept," she said, surprising herself with the firmness of her response. Alexander smiled, but there was something predatory in that smile. "Excellent. You'll leave tomorrow afternoon. My driver will pick you up at 3 o'clock. He stood up, extending his hand. "Welcome to the Nash family, Dr. Dawson." When their hands touched, Olivia felt an electric current run through her body. There was something about this man that awakened instincts she had buried with Claire, something dangerous but magnetic. Something she knew could destroy her, but at the same time promised answers she had been seeking for years. Leaving the office, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about Alexander's gaze. There was pain there, a pain that echoed her own. Two shipwrecked souls recognizing each other amid the storm, not yet knowing if they would save each other or drown together in the turbulent waters of the past. Alexander's property in Hudson Valley was more than just a country house. Built on top of a hill, the contemporary mansion blended Arabic and American elements, with suspended gardens that seemed to float between the Catskill Mountains. Olivia arrived in the late afternoon when the sun tinged the stones with a golden hue, creating a scene that seemed to come from a disturbing dream. The driver, a quiet middle-aged man, led her through electronic gates to the main entrance. Alexander was waiting for her in the entrance hall, wearing a white linen shirt and dark pants, his black hair slightly tousled by the mountain wind. There was something different about him away from the corporate environment, an informality that made him even more magnetic and dangerous. "Welcome to my refuge," he said, approaching to take her luggage. "I hope the trip was smooth." "Your property is impressive," Olivia murmured, observing the architectural details. Mosaics in shades of blue and gold decorated the walls, while internal fountains created a soft sound of running water that echoed through the corridors. "I built this place with my mother in mind. She always dreamed of having a house where she could hear the sound of water and smell the scent of flowers all day long." Alexander led her through wide corridors, their voices echoing slightly. She died before seeing the project completed. Olivia noticed the genuine pain in his voice. "I'm very sorry. It happened a long time ago. I was 18. He stopped in front of a carved wooden door. "This will be your room. The laboratory where the manuscripts are kept is in the West Wing. Tomorrow morning after breakfast, I'll take you there." The room was spacious and elegant, with a double bed covered in earthy-toned fabrics and a balcony offering a view of the mountains. Olivia noticed that there were books carefully arranged on the bookshelf, all related to the history of Arab immigration to America. It was no coincidence. "Alexander," she said, turning to face him, "I need you to be honest with me. Why did you really bring me here?" He approached, stopping just inches from her. The proximity made Olivia feel his scent, sandalwood mixed with something wilder, more dangerous. "Because I believe you are the key to solving a mystery that has been destroying my family for decades." "What mystery?" "My parents' death was not accidental, and your great-grandmother, Yasmin, knew who was behind the murder." Alexander reached out, lightly touching her arm. "In the documents she left, there are names, dates, connections that can help me bring justice." Olivia felt a shiver run through her skin at the point where he touched her. "And what does this have to do with my sister?" Claire didn't commit suicide by chance. She had discovered something about Yasmin, something that threatened powerful people. "The same kind of people who killed my parents." The revelation hit Olivia like a punch to the stomach. "Are you saying my sister was murdered?" "I'm saying she knew too much, and that you, following in her footsteps, are in the same danger." Alexander held her face between his hands, forcing her to look at him. "But here with me you'll be protected. We can discover the truth together." Olivia should have stepped back, should have questioned the logic of this man who seemed to know more about her family than she did herself. But there was something in the intensity of his gaze, in the way his hands trembled slightly as he touched her, that made her believe he was being sincere. "Show me the documents," she whispered. Alexander smiled, but there was sadness in that smile. Tonight I want you to rest, to prepare for what's to come." He stepped back, but before leaving he turned one last time. "Olivia, there's something you need to know. You're not the only person I've brought here. There are 2 other women who arrived today." Each has her own connection to my family's past. Other women? Olivia felt a pang of something she couldn't identify: jealousy, disappointment. Sophia Martinez, a specialist in Islamic art who has been living in New York for 5 years. She lost her mother in circumstances similar to mine, and Elise Laurent, a young French woman who specializes in translating ancient Arabic manuscripts. She was adopted as a baby, but there's evidence that her biological mother had connections to my family. Olivia felt the world spin again. You're collecting broken people to solve your mysteries. I'm gathering people who, like me, lost loved ones because of the secrets my family carries, people who deserve to know the truth. Alexander approached again, his voice low and intense. Don't think you're just a tool, Olivia. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. I knew you could be my salvation, or my ruin. And what should I do with that information? Trust me. Even if everything you believe about your family crumbles, even if we discover truths we'd rather not know. He touched her face once more, his thumb caressing her cheek. You're stronger than you think, Olivia. Stronger than Claire ever was. After he left, Olivia sat on the bed, trying to process everything she had heard. Alexander Nash was a dangerous man, that much was clear. But there was something in the way he talked about family, about the pain he carried, that echoed her own anguish. 2 orphans united by tragedies that transcended generations. She rose and walked to the balcony, observing the lights of the town below. For the first time in years since Claire's death, she felt she was in the right place, that she had finally found someone who understood the weight of family secrets. But as she watched the dark mountains, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about the other 2 women, Sophia and Elise. Who were they really? And why did Alexander need all of them to solve a mystery that seemed too personal to be shared? The cold mountain wind brought the distant sound of Arabic music, played somewhere in the house. The melody was melancholic, almost ghostly, and Olivia had the strange sensation that those notes had echoed through these mountains before, in a time her memory couldn't reach, but her heart recognized. Olivia woke to the sound of rain beating against the window panes. Dawn in Hudson Valley was cold and misty, creating an atmosphere that seemed straight out of a film noir. She had slept little, tormented by dreams where Claire appeared whispering Arabic names she couldn't understand. When she got up, she found a tray with coffee and fresh bread outside her door, along with a handwritten note. The laboratory is at the end of the west corridor. I'll be there at 9 o'clock. A. She put on a wool sweater and dark pants, tied her hair in a ponytail and followed the instructions. The west corridor was decorated with old photographs of the Nash family, faces that seemed to watch her as she walked. There were images of ceremonies, weddings, children playing in gardens she didn't recognize, but it was one photograph in particular that made her stop abruptly. The image showed a young woman with dark hair and penetrating eyes, holding a child in her arms. On the back, written in faded ink, Yasmin Al-Safi and her daughter Amira, 1943. Olivia felt her heart race. That was her great-grandmother, the woman Claire had obsessively searched for. But who was Amira? And why was a photograph of her in Alexander's house? The resemblance is striking, isn't it? Alexander's voice behind her made her start. He approached, looking at the photograph with an indecipherable expression. You have the same eyes as her, the same strength in your gaze. Who is Amira? Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Your grandmother, the daughter Yasmin had with my great-grandfather, Alexander Nash. He paused, letting the information sink in. You and I are distant cousins, Olivia. Our blood mixed decades ago. Olivia felt the world spin. That's impossible. My grandmother was named Mary Dawson. She was the daughter of Portuguese immigrants. Mary Dawson was the name Amira adopted when she fled America, pregnant and afraid. She settled in South Carolina, married a local man, and built a new identity. Alexander touched the glass of the photograph gently. But she never forgot her origins, nor the secrets her mother entrusted to her before dying. What secrets? Come, I'll show you. Alexander led her to a set of dark wooden double doors. But first, I need you to meet the other 2 women. They arrived last night and are also discovering truths about their origins. They entered a spacious room that had been transformed into a laboratory. Glass tables displayed documents protected by domes, specialized microscopes, and restoration equipment. Two women were bent over manuscripts, both looking as lost as Olivia felt. The first was a woman of about 30, black hair tied in an elegant bun, tanned skin, and dark eyes that conveyed an almost feline intensity. She wore a white silk blouse and black pants, each movement calculated with precision. When she raised her eyes, Olivia felt she was being evaluated by someone accustomed to reading people like open books. "Olivia, this is Sofia Martinez. She's an expert in Islamic art and Arabic calligraphy." Alexander gestured to the woman, who rose with elegance. "Sophia, this is Olivia Dawson, the restorer I mentioned." Sophia extended her hand, her grip firm and calculated. "Pleasure to meet you. Alexander told me you also lost someone because of this family's secrets." There was something in her tone that Olivia couldn't fully decipher, genuine sympathy or strategic analysis. "Sophia lost her mother when she was 16, Alexander explained. Elena Martinez was murdered in New York, supposedly during a robbery. But investigators never found those responsible, and certain evidence pointed to a planned execution. "My mother was a journalist," Sophia added, her eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "She was investigating connections between Arab families in America and money laundering schemes. Some names she discovered are in the documents we're restoring." The second woman was younger, appearing to be in her early 20s. She had light blonde hair and blue eyes, but there was something in the way she moved that suggested a different origin. She didn't speak, but her hands expressed an eloquence that dispensed with words. She was examining a manuscript with a magnifying glass, making notes in a notebook. "And this is Elise Laurent," Alexander said, touching the young woman's shoulder to get her attention. She looked up and smiled, then made a series of quick gestures with her hands. "Elise has been deaf since birth, but she's one of the best translators of ancient Arabic manuscripts in Europe. She communicates in sign language, but also writes fluently in English." Elise picked up her notebook and wrote quickly, "Pleasure to meet you, Olivia. Alexander told me you're also looking for answers about your family. Perhaps we can help each other." Olivia looked at the three people around her, Alexander, Sophia, and Elise, and felt she was being dragged into something much bigger than she had imagined. "Alexander, I need to understand. Why did you gather all of us here? What exactly do you expect us to discover? Come, I'll show you." Alexander led them to a central table where several documents were displayed. "These are the manuscripts Yasmin left before disappearing. Poems, letters, and a diary she wrote in code. For years I tried to decipher them alone, but I realized I needed people who had personal connections to the story." Sophia approached one of the letters, her eyes scanning the Arabic lines. "This one mentions my mother. It says Eleanor was close to discovering the truth about the murder of the Nash couple in 1983. "My parents," Alexander murmured, his voice laden with emotion. Elise pointed to a symbol in the corner of one of the manuscripts and wrote in her notebook, "This symbol appears in a letter my adoptive mother left me. She said my biological mother had drawn this before disappearing." Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. Claire had drawn similar symbols before she died. "I thought they were just scribbles, but now you realize we're all connected by a conspiracy that spans generations," Sophia said, her voice low and intense. "The question is, who were the true enemies of the Nash family? And why did our mothers pay the price for discovering the truth?" Alexander approached Olivia, his eyes fixed on hers. "That's what we're going to find out. Together." He extended his hand, gently touching her arm. "But I need you to know that once we start unraveling these mysteries, there's no going back. Some truths can be more dangerous than ignorance." Olivia looked at Sophia and Elise, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. Three women united by pain, by the search for answers their mothers had died trying to find, and a man who seemed to be both their salvation and their possible doom. "We're ready," said Olivia, speaking for all of them. "We want to know the truth, no matter the price." Alexander's smile was both relieved and worried. "Then let's begin. But remember, from now on your lives will never be the same." The following days passed in an intense routine of work and disturbing discoveries. The three women immersed themselves in the manuscripts with a dedication that bordered on obsession, each contributing their specialties to unravel the secrets Yasmin had left encoded. Alexander observed everything with an attention that Olivia began to perceive as something deeper than mere academic interest. During the mornings, They worked together in the laboratory, but as trust grew between them, Olivia noticed that Alexander spent more time observing her specifically. His gazes lingered longer than necessary when she bent over the documents, and he always found reasons to approach her, touch her hand when pointing to something on the paper, or whisper explanations close to her ear. It was Sophia who first vocalized what they were all thinking. On the third night, as they dined on the mansion's terrace, she set down her fork and stared directly at Alexander. "You didn't bring us here just for our knowledge, did you?" Alexander stopped eating, his eyes meeting Sophia's. "What do you mean?" "I mean there's something more personal in all this, something that has to do with the way you look at Olivia." Sophia gestured subtly in her direction. "You knew her before seeking her out for this work." Olivia felt her face heat up. "Sophia, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do," Sophia interrupted her. "We're all risking our lives here. We deserve to know the complete truth." She turned to Alexander again. "So? What aren't you telling us?" Alexander was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the wine glass in his hands. Finally, he sighed deeply. "I knew Claire before she died." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia felt the world spin around her. "What did you say?" "Your sister sought me out 6 months ago. She had discovered the connection between your family and mine through her research on Yasmin. We met 3 times, always in public places, always with her nervous, looking over her shoulder." Alexander raised his eyes to Olivia, and she saw genuine pain there. "She was afraid, Olivia. Very afraid." "Afraid of what?" Olivia's voice came out as a whisper. "Of people who didn't want her to continue investigating. Claire had discovered that my parents' death wasn't an isolated accident. She found evidence that there's an organization, a group of powerful people, who eliminate anyone who gets too close to the truth about corruption schemes dating back to the 80s. Elise wrote quickly in her notebook and showed it to the others. "Is that why she killed herself, to protect you?" "I don't know," Alexander replied, his voice breaking. "In our last conversation, she said she had found something that would change everything, that she finally had enough evidence to expose my parents' killers. But she also said that if something happened to her, I should seek out the 3 of you." "She knew about us?" Sophia asked, incredulous. "Claire was more perceptive than you imagine. She had traced the family connections, discovered that Sophia was Elena Martinez's daughter, that Elise was the daughter of a woman who had disappeared under similar circumstances. She believed the 3 of you, working together, could finish what she had started." Olivia stood up abruptly, walking to the terrace balustrade. The view of the mountains at night normally calmed her, but at that moment everything seemed suffocating. "So my sister didn't commit suicide because of depression or despair. She died because she was trying to bring justice." "Olivia?" Alexander approached, but she moved away. "Don't touch me." Her voice was laden with pain and anger. "You should have told me this from the beginning. I had the right to know. You had the right to choose whether you wanted to get involved or not," Sophia added, also standing. "We all did." "If I had told the complete truth, would you have come?" Alexander asked, desperate. "Would you have risked your lives to bring justice for people you didn't even know?" "That's not your decision." Olivia turned to face him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You had no right to manipulate our emotions, our pain, to bring us here." "I didn't manipulate anything," Alexander protested, approaching her again. "My feelings for you are real, Olivia. From the moment I saw you, I knew you were special, not just because of the connection with Claire, but because of who you are." "How can I believe anything you say now?" Olivia asked, her voice breaking. "How can I trust someone who uses my sister's death to manipulate me?" "Because I also lost someone I loved," Alexander shouted, his composure finally crumbling. "Because I also carry that pain every day. Because when I look at you, I see the only person who can completely understand me." The silence that followed was charged with tension and raw emotion. Sophia and Elise observed the scene with expressions that mixed sympathy and concern. Elise wrote something in her notebook and showed it to Sophia, who nodded gravely. "Alexander," Sophia said softly, "you need to tell us everything. No omissions, no half-truths. If we're going to continue working together, there needs to be complete trust between us." Alexander ran his hands through his hair, visibly shaken. "There's more, much more. But some things could put you in real danger." "More danger than we're already in?" Olivia asked sarcastically. "Yes." Alexander stared directly at her. Because I discovered who is behind all this, and that person knows you're here. Olivia's blood froze. What do you mean? I received a call this morning, a voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. My uncle, Aaron Nash. He was the one who ordered my parents' deaths, and now he's coming here. Sophia approached Alexander, her posture tense. When? Tomorrow night. He said he wants to resolve this personally, that it's been too long since the family got together. Alexander looked at each of them. I would understand if you wanted to leave. There's still time. Olivia looked at Sophia and Elise, seeing the same determination in their eyes that she felt growing in her own chest. Despite the betrayal, despite the fear, she knew she couldn't leave. Not when she was so close to discovering the truth about Claire. We're not going anywhere, she said, her voice firm. But from now on, no lies, no omissions. We want to know everything. Everything, Sophia echoed. Elise wrote in her notebook, "Together we're stronger than he imagines." Alexander nodded, relief and concern mixed in his expression. Then let's prepare, because when my uncle arrives, there will be no turning back. The truth will come out, even if it means the destruction of everything we know. As the night progressed, the four figures on the terrace looked like soldiers before the final battle, united by pain, by the search for justice, and by bonds that transcended fear. Olivia knew that the man before her had lied to her, but she also knew that the connection between them was too real to be denied. And that perhaps was the most dangerous thing of all. The next morning dawned with a dense fog covering the mountains, as if nature itself was conspiring to create an atmosphere of mystery and tension. Olivia woke up early, unable to sleep after the revelations of the previous night. She found Alexander in the kitchen, preparing coffee with mechanical movements, his red eyes suggesting that he too had spent the night awake. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice still hoarse from sleep. "Not much." He offered her a cup, his fingers brushing hers during the transfer. "Olivia, about last night. I know you have every right to be furious with me. I do." She took a sip of coffee, watching him over the rim of the cup. "But I also understand why you did it. Pain makes people make desperate decisions. That doesn't justify lying to you." "No, it doesn't." Olivia set down the cup and approached him. "But Claire always said that sometimes we have to choose between being right and being alive. Maybe you made the only choice that would ensure we got here." Alexander watched her with an intensity that made her feel butterflies in her stomach. "You're amazing, you know that? Stronger than you think. I learned to be strong because I had no choice." Olivia touched his face gently. "Just like you." For a moment they stood like that, lost in each other's eyes, the air between them charged with a tension that went far beyond the danger they would face. Alexander held her hand against his face, turning his head slightly to kiss her palm. "Alexander," she began, but was interrupted by Sophia's arrival. "Sorry to interrupt," Sophia said, though she didn't look the least bit sorry. "But we found something important in the manuscripts." They followed her to the laboratory, where Elise was bent over a table, several documents spread around her. She looked up when she saw them arrive and pointed to a specific letter, writing quickly in her notebook. Elise discovered that this letter wasn't written by Yasmin, Sophia explained, translating what was written. "The calligraphy is different, and there are certain expressions that don't match her vocabulary." Alexander approached the table, studying the document. "Who wrote it then?" "Someone who wanted us to believe it was Yasmin," Olivia replied, analyzing the paper. "But why? Why create false letters?" Elise wrote another note and showed it to them, "To divert our attention from the real truth. This letter talks about a hidden treasure, but the others mention something much more dangerous." "What exactly?" Alexander asked. Sophia took another document, pointing to certain passages. "Yasmin didn't disappear. She was murdered. And before she died, she hid evidence that could destroy not just your family, Alexander, but several other influential families in America." "What kind of evidence?" "Documents that prove money laundering schemes, political corruption, even arms trafficking. All during the 80s and 90s, when many Arab families were consolidating their empires in America." Sophia paused, letting the information sink in. "Your family was involved, Alexander, but your parents discovered it and tried to get out of the scheme. That's why they were killed," Olivia concluded. "Exactly, and that's why Claire was killed too." She was too close to the truth. Sophia turned to Alexander. Your Uncle Aaron isn't just a murderer, he's the head of an organization that still operates today. Alexander sat heavily in a chair, running his hands through his hair. So, my parents weren't the saints I imagined. They tried to do the right thing in the end, Olivia said softly, approaching him. That counts for something. Does it? Alexander laughed bitterly. My family built its fortune on blood and corruption. How can I live with that? The same way all of us live with our pain, Sophia answered. You're not responsible for the crimes of your ancestors, but you are responsible for what you do with that information now. Elise wrote something urgently in her notebook and showed it to them. I found where Yasmin hid the evidence. There's a map in the manuscripts. They all bent over the table as Elise pointed to seemingly decorative symbols that actually formed a detailed map. It's here on the property, Olivia murmured, recognizing some landmarks. Yasmin was here before. My great-grandfather brought her here several times, Alexander confirmed. He said it was to protect her, but maybe it was to keep her under control. Or maybe she used those visits to hide the evidence where he would never think to look, Sophia suggested. The sound of cars climbing the steep road to the mansion made them freeze. Alexander looked at the clock. It was still noon. He arrived early. How many cars? Olivia asked, trying to stay calm. Alexander approached the window, looking through the curtains. 3, he didn't come alone. Then we don't have time to look for the evidence now, Sophia said, already putting away the manuscripts. We need a plan. I'll talk to him, Alexander said. You hide and... No, Olivia interrupted him. We won't hide. We've spent too long being victims of other people's decisions. Olivia, you don't understand. My uncle is dangerous. He killed my parents without hesitation. And that's exactly why he can't win. Olivia looked at Sophia and Elise, seeing the same determination in their eyes. The 3 of us lost people we loved because of him. It's time to bring justice. Elise wrote quickly. We have an advantage. He doesn't know we discovered the map. We can use that. How? Alexander asked. I'll distract him, Sophia said. I'll pretend I'm on his side, that I discovered things about you that he would like to know. That's too dangerous, Alexander protested. No more dangerous than letting him leave here alive, Sophia responded coldly. While I distract him, you look for the evidence. When you find it, we'll have what we need to destroy him. The sound of footsteps in the main hall indicated they had no more time to discuss. Alexander looked at each of the women, seeing courage where before there had been only pain. If we're going to do this, we do it together. No lone heroines. Together, Olivia agreed, taking his hand. Together, Sophia echoed. Elise wrote a final note. For Claire, for Elena, for all those who came before us. When Aaron Nash entered the laboratory a few minutes later, flanked by 2 armed men, he found 4 people who seemed to be waiting for him. There was something in their posture, in the way they positioned themselves, that made him hesitate for a moment. Dear nephew, he said, his voice laden with false cordiality. It's been a long time. Uncle Aaron, Alexander replied, his voice firm. Welcome to my home. Aaron smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. Our home, you mean? After all, I am the only legitimate heir to the Nash empire now. We'll see, Olivia said, stepping forward. First, you're going to tell us exactly what happened to our parents. Aaron laughed, an unpleasant sound that echoed through the corridors. Ah, so you already know who you are. How interesting. This will make things much more entertaining. The final battle was about to begin, and none of them knew who would come out alive on the other side. Aaron Nash was a man of distinguished appearance, grey hair impeccably combed and dark eyes that seemed to calculate every movement around him. He wore an expensive suit and carried a cane of fine wood, more for elegance than necessity. But there was something in the way he moved, in the manner his eyes scanned the environment, that made it clear he was an experienced predator. You've all grown so much, he said, specifically observing Olivia and then Sophia. Especially you, dear Sophia. You look so much like your mother. Elena was a very persistent woman. Persistent enough to discover your secrets, Sophia replied, her voice controlled but laden with venom. That's why you killed her. I didn't kill anyone personally, Aaron replied with a cold smile. I merely remove obstacles. Eleanor was becoming a problem for many important people. Just like my parents, Alexander said, stepping forward. Just like Claire. Ah yes, the twin sister. Aaron looked at Olivia with renewed interest. Claire was particularly problematic, too intelligent for her own good. She had discovered things that could ruin not just our family, but several other respectable families. Respectable? Olivia laughed bitterly. You call money laundering and murder respectable? I call it necessary, Aaron responded, approaching her. You think America became what it is today by accident? People like me, like your great-grandfather, built this country with blood, sweat, and yes, some difficult decisions. My great-grandfather wasn't a murderer, Alexander protested. Not directly, no. But he knew what was happening. And when his conscience began to bother him, when he wanted to step away from the business, I had to take measures. Aaron stopped in front of Alexander, his eyes fixed on his. Your parents inherited the same inconvenient conscience. Fortunately, you seem to have inherited something different. What do you mean? You built an empire, Alexander. Clean, legal, respected, but also limited. Aaron gestured around. Imagine what you could achieve if you didn't have these moral limitations. Are you offering me a partnership? Alexander asked, incredulous. I'm offering an opportunity. Join me, and we can continue the Nash family legacy the right way. Powerful, without obstacles. Aaron looked at the three women. Of course, this would require getting rid of some complications. Never, Alexander said immediately. Think carefully, nephew. These women are beautiful, certainly, but they're also dangerous. They know too much, and women who know too much have a tendency to disappear. It was then that Sophia moved, that, with a fluid movement, she approached Aaron, her posture changing to something more submissive. Mr. Nash, may I speak with you privately? Aaron studied her with interest. Certainly, my dear. What do you have to say? I didn't come here just to help with the manuscripts, Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. I came here to avenge my mother. But now I realize that perhaps I was pursuing the wrong man. Continue, Aaron said, intrigued. Alexander told me you killed my mother, but he also told me many other things that didn't prove true. Maybe you're not the villain of this story. Sophia looked at Alexander with an expression of contempt that seemed convincing. Maybe he's using all of us for his own ends. Olivia felt her heart stop. Was Sophia really betraying them, or was this part of some plan she hadn't understood? Elise seemed equally confused, her eyes jumping between Sophia and Aaron. Interesting, Aaron murmured. And what do you propose? Information. I know where the evidence that Yasmin hid is. I know what Claire discovered before she died, and I know that Alexander is planning to use this information to destroy you. Sophia moved closer to Aaron. But perhaps we can come to an agreement. Sophia, what are you doing? Alexander asked, genuinely shocked. I'm surviving, she replied coldly, just as my mother should have done. Aaron smiled, clearly pleased. Very well. Then tell me, where is this evidence? First, I want guarantees. I want to know I'll leave here alive and rich. Sophia crossed her arms. My mother died poor and afraid. I don't intend to make the same mistake. You are indeed Elena's daughter, Aaron laughed. She also tried to negotiate in the end. Unfortunately, she didn't have anything valuable enough to offer. But I do, Sophia insisted. I have the evidence. I have information about international connections, and I have something you want even more. What would that be? Alexander. He trusts me. I can make him join you voluntarily, without violence, without coercion, just proper persuasion. Olivia felt nauseous. If Sophia was acting, it was the performance of her life. If she wasn't, then they were all lost. And in return? Aaron asked. 50% of the profits from future operations, an apartment in Paris, and the guarantee that neither Olivia nor Elise will be harmed. They're innocent in all this. Innocent? Aaron looked at Olivia. No woman from Yasmin's family is innocent. They carry secrets in their blood. Then use that to your advantage, Sophia suggested. Olivia can be useful. She understands the manuscripts better than anyone. And Elise, well, Elise has other qualities. Elise wrote something quickly in her notebook, but didn't show it to anyone. Instead, she slowly approached one of the tables as if just walking distractedly. You make a lot of sense, Aaron said to Sophia. But how can I trust you? How do I know this isn't a trap? Because you hold all the cards, Sophia replied. You have armed men, you have control of the situation, and I have something you want. It's a simple transaction. Sophia, don't do this, Alexander implored. After everything we've discovered, after everything we've been through together. Together? Sophia laughed. You brought us here under false pretenses. You used our pain to manipulate us. Why should I be loyal to someone who has lied to me from the first moment? Because you know he's trying to do the right thing, Olivia said desperately. Because you know this man killed your mother in cold blood. And you know what kind of life I'll have if I continue fighting against him? Sophia turned to Olivia. Do you know how many people like us have disappeared over the years? I won't be another one. Aaron watched the entire exchange with growing satisfaction. Very well, Sophia. You've convinced me. We have a deal. Excellent, Sophia smiled. Then let's begin. The evidence is hidden in... It was at that moment that Elise moved. With surprising speed, she grabbed a flask of acid from the restoration table and hurled it toward Aaron's face. He dodged just in time, the corrosive liquid hitting the wall behind him. Now! Sophia shouted, completely abandoning the charade. The laboratory exploded into chaos. Aaron's men drew their weapons, but Alexander was already moving, knocking over one of the tables to create cover. Olivia threw herself behind a bookshelf, while Sophia and Elise ran in opposite directions. You think you can fool me? Aaron shouted, his composure finally broken. I built this empire on the bodies of people like you. Then it's time for it to crumble, Alexander replied, appearing from behind the overturned table. The war had begun, and there would be no prisoners. The gunshots echoed through the laboratory like thunder in a storm. Alexander dragged Olivia behind a bookshelf while glass fragments flew around them. The smell of gunpowder and spilled chemicals created a suffocating atmosphere. Sophia had managed to hide behind a marble table, while Elise moved with surprising agility between the shadows of the laboratory. You can't run forever, Aaron shouted, his voice echoing through the room. This property has only one exit, and my men are controlling it. He's right, Alexander murmured to Olivia, checking if she was injured. We need to get to the evidence before he kills us. The map, Olivia whispered back. Elise still has the map. They searched for the young French woman in the chaos of the laboratory. Elise had strategically positioned herself near the window, holding the notebook against her chest. When she saw that they were looking at her, she made quick signs with her hands. She's saying the location is in the basement, Sophia translated, able to see Elise's gestures from her position. In the old wine cellars. How will we get there? Alexander asked. The answer came in the form of a deafening explosion. Aaron had ordered one of his men to throw a stun grenade into the laboratory. The explosion of light and sound momentarily disoriented everyone, but it also created the distraction they needed. Run! Sophia shouted, emerging from her hiding place and grabbing Elise by the arm. The four moved as a unit through the corridors of the mansion, with Aaron's men in pursuit. Alexander knew every corner of the property, guiding them through passages his pursuers didn't know. But Aaron also knew the house. He had spent part of his childhood there, before becoming the monster he was now. This way, Alexander indicated a spiral staircase that led to the basement. But be careful. It could be a trap. They descended quickly, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. The basement was an old construction, with brick arches and humidity that made the hairs on their arms stand up. Rows of wine shelves extended into the shadows, creating a labyrinth of wood and glass. Where exactly? Olivia asked, consulting the map Elise had deciphered. Behind the third shelf on the right, Elise wrote quickly. There's a false wall. They ran to the indicated location, finding a section of the wall that seemed slightly different from the others. Alexander ran his hands over the surface until he found a disguised lever. When he pulled it, a panel opened, revealing a hidden space. Inside was a metal box, protected from humidity for decades. Olivia opened it with trembling hands, revealing piles of documents, photographs, and cassette tapes. These were the evidence Yasmin had collected before her death. Proof of corruption, money laundering, and murders that could destroy not just Aaron, but the entire network of criminals operating in America. My God, Sophia murmured, leafing through some of the photographs. There are politicians here, judges, businessmen, people who are still in power. That's why she was killed, Alexander said, his voice laden with emotion. That's why everyone was killed. This evidence could bring down governments. And now it's ours, Olivia said, putting everything back in the box. We can use this to ensure Aaron never hurts anyone again. First, we need to get out of here alive, Sophia reminded them. As if her words had been a presage, the sound of footsteps echoed down the basement stairs. Aaron had found them. You really think you can blackmail me? His voice echoed between the wine shelves. You think these old pieces of evidence mean anything? They mean you're a murderer, Alexander replied, positioning himself in front of the women. They mean you destroyed our family out of greed. I saved our family, Aaron retorted, emerging from the shadows with a pistol in hand. You don't understand how the world works. Power isn't asked for, it's taken. It isn't inherited, it's conquered. By killing innocent people? Olivia asked, holding the box against her chest. Innocent? Aaron laughed. Your great-grandmother was blackmailing half the government. Your parents wanted to turn our organization over to the FBI. Your sister was about to publish an article that would destroy us. Where's the innocence in that? They were trying to do the right thing, Sophia said, stepping forward. Something you never understood. The right thing? Aaron pointed the gun at her. The right thing is to survive. The right thing is to protect the family's interests. The right thing is to eliminate threats before they eliminate you. No, a new voice echoed through the basement. The right thing is to bring justice. Everyone turned, surprised. At the entrance to the basement stood a middle-aged man with grey hair and determined eyes. He wore a bulletproof vest and carried a pistol. Inspector Harrison, Aaron said, his voice revealing genuine surprise. I thought you had retired. I retired from the FBI, but I never stopped investigating Elena Martinez's murder, the inspector replied. She was my informant and a friend. Your informant? Sophia asked, incredulous. Elena had been working with us for months before she was killed. She had infiltrated Aaron's organization and was collecting evidence. The inspector kept his gun pointed at Aaron, evidence that disappeared after her death. Until now, Olivia said, raising the box. Yasmin kept everything. Everything Elena collected, everything she discovered. Impossible, Aaron murmured. I destroyed all of Elena's personal files. You destroyed the copies, Sophia said, finally understanding. But my mother was smarter than you thought. She delivered the originals to Yasmin before she died. And Yasmin hid them here, knowing that someday someone would come looking for them, Alexander added. Aaron looked around, realizing he was surrounded. His empire, built on decades of crime and blood, was crumbling before his eyes. You have no idea what you've just done. There are people much more powerful than me in this organization, people who won't hesitate to kill you. Then we'll have to protect ourselves, the inspector said. But first, Aaron Nash, you're under arrest for the murder of at least 12 people, including Elena Martinez, Claire Dawson, and the Nash couple. You can't prove anything, Aaron challenged. Yes, I can, a weak voice echoed from the top of the stairs. Because I recorded everything. Everyone looked up. At the top of the stairs was one of Aaron's men, but he was no longer pointing his gun at them. Instead, he held a digital recorder. Marcus? Aaron asked, incredulous. I worked for you for 20 years, Aaron. 20 years doing things that shame me. But when you ordered the death of that girl, Claire, I knew I had to stop. Marcus descended the stairs slowly. I recorded our conversation this afternoon. I have your complete confession. You betrayed me, Aaron whispered. You betrayed yourself, Marcus replied, the moment you decided that power was more important than humanity. Aaron looked around one last time, seeing his empire completely crumble. With a quick movement, he pointed the gun at his own head. If I can't have power, at least I can choose how to die. No, Alexander shouted, but it was too late. The shot echoed through the basement like a final thunder. Aaron Nash, the man who had destroyed so many lives in the name of power, had chosen his own destruction. In the silence that followed, the survivors looked at each other, barely able to believe it was finally over. Decades of secrets, lies, and murders had come to an end in a brutal but definitive manner. It's over, Olivia whispered, tears running down her cheeks. It's finally over. But when Alexander pulled her into his arms, she realized that, although one story had ended, another was just beginning. The months following Aaron's death were a whirlwind of investigations, testimonies, and revelations that shook not just the families involved, but the entire political and business structure of America. The evidence found on Alexander's property led to the arrest of dozens of influential people, from politicians to judges, businessmen to police officers. The country watched in bewilderment as one of the largest corruption networks in Republican history was dismantled. Olivia found herself at the center of a media storm that she had never imagined. As one of the main witnesses and holder of the evidence, she had to temporarily move to a protected location while giving testimony after testimony. Alexander, also under protection, faced the difficult task of rebuilding not just his company, but his own identity after discovering his family's dark past. "Do you regret it?" Olivia asked on a rainy June afternoon as they watched New York through the bulletproof windows of the safe apartment where they were staying. Having stirred all this up, Alexander embraced her from behind, resting his chin on the top of her head. "Never. For the first time in 20 years, I can sleep in peace, knowing I've brought justice for my parents." "And Claire," Olivia added, her voice laden with emotion. "I finally know why she died. I finally understand that she didn't abandon me out of weakness, but out of courage." "She would be proud of you," Alexander murmured, kissing the top of her head, "of how you faced all this." Olivia turned in his arms, studying the face of the man who had become much more than just an ally in the search for truth. During the interrogations, the sleepless nights organizing evidence, the moments of terror when they discovered there were still members of Aaron's organization at large, they had developed an intimacy that transcended the physical. "Alexander," she began, hesitant, "when all this is over, when we no longer need police protection, when we can return to our lives, you're wondering if what we have is real or just a consequence of shared trauma," he completed, demonstrating that he knew her fears better than she imagined. "It's a possibility," she admitted. "People in extreme situations sometimes confuse dependence with love." "And you think that's what we're doing?" Olivia looked into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability that Alexander rarely showed. "I don't know. I'm afraid to find out." "Then let's find out together," he said, holding her face between his hands. "No rush, no pressure. Let's get to know each other in times of peace, not just in times of war." The conversation was interrupted by Sophia's arrival, who knocked on the door with the code they had established. She entered carrying a bottle of champagne and a smile that hadn't appeared on her face for months. "Good news," she announced, setting the bottle on the table. "Inspector Harrison just called. They've arrested the last members of the organization. Officially, we're free." "Free," Olivia repeated the word as if it were a strange concept. "Free," Sophia confirmed. "We can return to our lives, our homes, our jobs. We can be normal people again." "And Elise?" Alexander asked. "She decided to stay in New York a while longer. She's fascinated by American culture and secured a position at Columbia University, translating historical manuscripts." Sophia served 3 glasses of champagne. "She's finally making peace with her origins." "And you?" Olivia asked. "What will you do now?" "I'm going to finish the work my mother started," Sophia replied without hesitation. "I'm going to write a book about this whole story, about the women who died trying to expose the truth, about how corruption infiltrates even the most respected families." "Aren't you afraid of retaliation?" Alexander asked. "No more than I've been in the last few months," Sophia smiled. "Besides, now I have protection. The French government offered me political asylum until things completely calmed down. They toasted to freedom, to justice, and to the memory of those they had lost. But as they drank, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about what would come next. For the first time in years, she would have to build a future without the shadow of Claire's death hanging over her. "You know," she said, looking at Alexander, "I never asked you what you want from life, beyond justice, beyond truth. What does Alexander Nash want for himself?" "Honestly?" He paused, as if considering the question for the first time. "I want a family. I want a life where I don't have to constantly look over my shoulder. I want to wake up next to someone who knows me completely and still chooses to stay." "That sounds possible," Olivia said softly. "It does," he agreed. "For the first time in a long time, it seems possible." Sophia watched the exchange between them with a knowing smile. "You two are impossible. You've been through all this together and are still dancing around your own feelings." "It's not that simple," Olivia protested. "No, it's not simple," Sophia agreed. "Love is never simple. But you know what's even more complicated? spending the rest of your life wondering what if. Sophia's right, Alexander said, taking Olivia's hand. We've lost too many people, too much time to continue wasting chances to be happy. Are you asking me to stay? Olivia asked. I'm asking you to consider that maybe it's not a coincidence that we met this way. Maybe Claire and my parents somehow guided us to each other. That's very romantic for a pragmatic businessman, Olivia laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. Apparently you bring out the romantic side in me, Alexander replied, raising her hand to his lips. Olivia Dawson, would you do me the honor of finding out if we can be happy together? Under one condition, she said, trying to maintain seriousness. Which is? No more secrets, no more lies, no more dangerous investigations. Just the two of us discovering how to be normal people. Normal and boring people, Alexander agreed, pulling her closer. Normal and boring people, Olivia repeated, before kissing him. Sophia raised her glass again. To new beginnings, and to second chances. To second chances, they repeated in unison. Outside, New York continued its frenetic dance, oblivious to the fact that three people had decided it was possible to find peace after the storm, that it was possible to build love on the ruins of pain, that it was possible, finally, to be happy. But as they sealed their commitment to a future together, none of them knew that the true test of their love was yet to come. That rebuilding a life is much harder than destroying a conspiracy, and that some wounds, even healed, leave scars that can be reopened. The war had ended, but the battle for happiness was just beginning. 6 months later, Olivia was back in Charleston, but this time she wasn't running away. She had returned to make peace with the past, to visit Claire's grave and finally be able to say the words she had kept in her heart all those years. Alexander was with her, watching as she placed white flowers on the marble headstone. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand, Olivia murmured, kneeling before the grave. Sorry for thinking you abandoned me. Now I know you died trying to protect all of us. Alexander approached, placing his hand on her shoulder. She knows, he said softly. I'm sure she knows. Sometimes I feel like she's watching, Olivia confessed, standing up and wiping away tears, as if she's proud that we finally found the truth. Maybe she is, Alexander replied, pulling her into an embrace. Maybe she's at peace knowing you found a way to be happy. Their life had settled into a routine that was both comforting and challenging. Olivia had returned to work as a restorer, but now focused on projects that involved preserving the historical memory of Arab communities in America. Alexander had completely restructured his company, implementing radical transparency policies and allocating a large part of the profits to organizations that fought corruption. They lived together in an apartment in Brooklyn, a quiet neighborhood in New York that offered the perfect balance between urbanity and peace. But living together had revealed challenges that neither of them had anticipated during the intense months of investigation. You still have nightmares, Alexander observed one morning after Olivia had woken up screaming for the third time that week. Sometimes, she admitted, sipping the coffee he had prepared, I dream about Aaron, about that night in the laboratory. I dream that he didn't die, that he's coming after us. He's dead, Olivia, we saw the body. I know, logically I know, but fear... She paused, searching for the right words. Fear isn't always logical. It's not, Alexander agreed, sitting next to her. I have my demons too. I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I'll find evidence that my father was more involved than we thought. Don't you think we're using each other as crutches? Olivia asked, verbalizing the fear that had grown in silence. That we're together because it's easier than facing our traumas alone? Possibly, Alexander replied, with an honesty that surprised her. But I don't think that makes our feelings any less real. All people lean on each other, Olivia. The difference is that we went through something extraordinary together. Extraordinary, she repeated, considering the word. That's an interesting way to describe absolute terror. Not the terror the way we faced the terror. Together. Olivia smiled, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. When you put it that way, I put it that way because it's true, Alexander interrupted, taking her hand. Olivia, do you think I would be here if I didn't want to be? Do you think, after everything I've been through, I would waste time on something that wasn't absolutely real? No, she admitted. You wouldn't do that. Then stop questioning what we have. Stop looking for reasons to believe it's not true. Alexander leaned in, kissing her softly. Sometimes, Good things happen even after tragedies. Sometimes, she agreed, kissing him back. It was at that moment that the phone rang. It was Sophia calling from Paris, where she had finished her book and was negotiating with international publishers. "I have news," she said, her voice laden with excitement. "Good and bad." "Start with the good," Alexander said, putting the phone on speaker. "The book will be published in 12 countries. There's interest from Hollywood for the film rights. And most importantly, the foundation I'm creating in memory of our mothers has received an initial donation of 5 million euros. "That's amazing, Sophia," Olivia said, genuinely happy. "And the bad news? I discovered there were more people involved in Aaron's organization than we thought. People who weren't arrested, who are still active." Sophia paused. "I've received some threats." "What kind of threats?" Alexander asked, his voice immediately tense. "Nothing specific. Anonymous letters, phone calls. People reminding me that some truths are better kept secret." "You need protection," Olivia said. "I already have it. The French government assigned personal security for me, but I wanted to warn you. If they're threatening me, they might come after you too." Alexander and Olivia exchanged worried looks. They had assumed the worst was over, that they could finally live in peace. "Is Elise okay?" Alexander asked. "As far as I know, yes. She's in New York, working at the university, but I haven't spoken to her in a few weeks." "We'll look for her," Olivia said. "We'll make sure she's safe." "There's one more thing," Sophia continued. "I found something in my mother's files, something she hid that might be relevant to you." "What?" "A birth certificate of a child born in 1983, daughter of Yasmin Al-Safi and Alexander Nash Sr. The silence on the line was deafening. Alexander felt the world spin around him. "That's impossible. My father died in 1983. My parents died in the same accident." "Not in the same accident," Sophia gently corrected. "Your mother died 3 months later, and according to this document, she was pregnant when she died." "Pregnant?" Olivia asked, incredulous. "With a girl who was saved by emergency cesarean and given up for adoption." Sophia paused. "Alexander, you have a sister. Where is she?" Alexander asked, his voice almost inaudible. "I don't know, but I have the name of the family who adopted her. Laurent. A French family who lived in America at the time." "Laurent," Olivia repeated, and then her eyes widened. "Elise Laurent." "Exactly," Sophia confirmed. "Elise isn't just an accidental ally. She's your sister, Alexander. Your younger sister." The phone slipped from Alexander's hands. For all those months he had worked side by side with his own sister without knowing. Elise, the quiet French young woman who had translated the manuscripts, who had risked her life to help them, was his family. "We need to find her," Olivia said, already standing. "We need to tell her. And we need to protect her," Alexander added, regaining his composure. "If there are still dangerous people out there, she's at risk." "We all are," Sophia said. "But at least now we know. And knowledge is power." "Knowledge is power," Alexander repeated, looking at Olivia. "And family is everything." As they prepared to leave in search of Elise, Olivia realized that her life had changed again. When she thought they could finally have peace, the past came back to remind them that some stories never really end. But this time, she wasn't afraid. This time she had Alexander, and together they could face anything. "Ready?" Alexander asked, picking up the car keys. "Ready," Olivia replied, taking his hand. "Let's go find your sister. Let's go find our family." They found Elise in the library at Columbia University, surrounded by ancient manuscripts, completely oblivious to the danger surrounding her. When Alexander and Olivia approached her, she looked up and smiled, making quick greeting signs. But when they saw the serious expressions on their faces, her joy turned to concern. "Elise," Alexander began, not knowing how to approach the subject. "We need to talk to you, about your family, about who you really are." She tilted her head, confused, and picked up her notebook to write, "My family. Have you discovered something about my biological mother?" "We've discovered who your father was," Olivia said softly. "Elise, you're Alexander's sister, daughter of Alexander Nash Sr. and Yasmin Al-Safi." Elise's world seemed to stop. She looked between the two, searching for signs that this was some kind of cruel joke. When she realized they were serious, Her hands began to tremble. "It's impossible," she wrote quickly. "My adoptive parents told me my mother was Moroccan, that my father was unknown." "They were protecting you," Alexander explained, sitting beside her. "After our parents died, you were given up for adoption under a new identity to keep you safe. The Laurent family took you to France, where you grew up protected from the truth." Elise looked at Alexander with eyes that were identical to his, a resemblance everyone had noticed, but no one had questioned. Slowly, she extended her hand and touched his face, as if trying to confirm he was real. "Brother," she wrote, tears running down her cheeks. "I have a brother." "You do," Alexander confirmed, pulling her into a hug. "And you'll never be alone again." "But there's more," Olivia interrupted, hating to break the moment. "There are still dangerous people. People who want the secrets to remain buried." As if her words were a presage, Alexander's phone rang. It was an unknown number, but he answered anyway. "Alexander Nash," a cold voice said on the other end. "You and your friends and have made a lot of noise." "Who is this?" Alexander asked, signaling for Olivia to call the police. "Someone who worked with your uncle. Someone who doesn't appreciate having their business exposed in international media." The voice paused. "You have a choice. You can disappear quietly or you can join him." "We're not afraid of you," Alexander said, trying to keep his voice steady. "No? Then perhaps you should be. Look around." Alexander, Olivia, and Elise looked around the library. There were several men strategically positioned among the shelves, all dressed as students or professors, but with postures that betrayed their true purpose. "Leave calmly," the voice continued. "There's a black car waiting at the main entrance. Get in it. Any attempt to escape or call for help will result in unpleasant consequences for everyone present in this library." "We can't put other people in danger," Olivia murmured. "We won't," Alexander replied, making a decision. "We'll go out, but on their terms. For now." They rose slowly, Elise holding Alexander's arm as if afraid he might disappear. They walked through the library, passing innocent students who had no idea of the drama unfolding around them. The black car was waiting, exactly as promised. But as they approached, Alexander noticed something the man on the phone hadn't mentioned. There were several FBI cars discreetly positioned in the area, and he recognized Inspector Harrison among the agents. "Alexander," the inspector said, approaching quickly, "we received an alert about suspicious activity. Are you all okay?" "We're being threatened," Alexander explained quickly. "There are armed men in the library. We know. We've been tracking this group for weeks. Today is the day we catch them." The inspector signaled to his men. "You three are going to stay here under protection. We'll handle this." What followed was a coordinated police operation that resulted in the arrest of 8 people, including the man who had made the telephone threats. They discovered he was a former partner of Aaron's, who had managed to escape the initial investigations, but who couldn't resist the temptation to eliminate the main witnesses. "It's over," the inspector said, hours later, when everything had calmed down. "This time it's really over. We've caught all the remaining members of the organization." "Are you sure?" Olivia asked. "Absolutely. They weren't very smart. They left a digital trail that a child could follow." The inspector smiled. "You can return to your normal lives." "Definitely." That night, the 3 were in Alexander and Olivia's apartment, processing everything that had happened. Elise had decided to stay with them until they could make legal arrangements for her to officially become part of the Nash family. "I still can't believe it," Elise wrote in her notebook. "I spent my entire life feeling alone, and now I've discovered I always had a family." "And now you have an even bigger family," Olivia added. "Sophia considers herself your adoptive sister, too. We're all family now." "Chosen family," Alexander agreed. "The best kind." "There's something I need to ask," Elise wrote, looking directly at Alexander and Olivia. "Are you going to get married?" The question caught them both off guard. They had talked about the future, about building a life together, but the subject of marriage had never explicitly come up. "I don't know," Olivia answered honestly. "We're still figuring out how to be a normal couple." "Define normal," Alexander laughed. "After everything we've been through, I'm not sure we know what normal is." "Normal is this," Olivia said, gesturing around. "Talking about the future, taking care of each other, building something together. We don't need a piece of paper to make it official. But would you like one?" Alexander asked, turning to face her. "Would you like to marry me?" "Are you proposing to me?" Olivia asked, a smile playing on her lips. I'm asking if you'd like me to propose. Alexander Nash, you are impossible, Olivia laughed. Yes, I would like you to propose. And yes, when you do, I'll say yes. Then Alexander knelt before her, taking her hands. Olivia Dawson, would you marry me? Not because we went through a trauma together, not because it's convenient, but because I love you, because you make me want to be a better man, because I can't imagine my life without you. Yes, Olivia replied, tears in her eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. Elise applauded silently, her face radiant with happiness. She wrote quickly, Can I be a bridesmaid? You're going to be much more than that, Olivia said, hugging her. You're going to be my sister. Our sister, Alexander corrected, including everyone in the embrace. 2 years later, Alexander and Olivia were married in an intimate ceremony in Charleston, overlooking the South Carolina coast. Sophia came from Paris to be the maid of honor, Elise was a bridesmaid, and Inspector Harrison walked them down the aisle in the role of substitute father for both. During the ceremony, Olivia looked at the blue sky and whispered, Thank you, Claire, for guiding us here. Today, 5 years later, they live in a house in the Catskill Mountains where Alexander manages a foundation that fights corruption and Olivia directs a historical preservation center. Elise lives with them, working as a sign language teacher and translator. Sophia visits them regularly, and her foundation frequently collaborates with their projects. It's a simple life but fulfilling, a life built on the ruins of pain, but nourished by love and hope. Sometimes when the morning mist covers the mountains, Olivia still feels Claire's presence, not as a shadow of sadness, but as a blessing of peace. Do you regret it? Alexander sometimes asks, when they're sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Never, Olivia always responds. Because it was through pain that we found joy. It was through loss that we found love. And it was through truth that we found freedom, Alexander completes. Forever, Olivia agrees, kissing him softly. Forever. And in the mountains of the Catskills, where the secrets of past generations finally found peace, a new love story continues to be written. A story of second chances, of chosen families, and of the unshakable belief that love can flourish even in the most unlikely places.